All right.
I call to order the Cultural Climate and Behavior Committee meeting at 6:34. The boardroom right there at HS. Please call the roll.
Ms. Alexander, Dr. Applewhite, Mr. Brandhorst, Mr. Carbello, Mr. Coughlin,
Present.
Mr. Davis, Mr. Diggs,
Present.
Ms. Emerson, Ms. Grimes,
Present.
Ms. Janney, Ms. Jones, Ms. Lamb, Dr. Livingston, Ms. McQueen, Mr. Narain. Sorry, my tongue is, yeah. Ms. Newman,
Present.
Ms. Parker,
Here.
Ms. Scriber,
Here.
Ms. Stevens,
Here.
Ms. Walters.
Present.
Lisa, are there any public comments?
None.
We'll move on to approval of minutes. I move to approve the November 8th, 2023 CCB committee meeting minutes as presented. Are there any corrections or adjustments that need to be made?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And very quickly, and let me just say, thanks to all of you. Super cold night. I am shocked and really delighted that we have a forum and that so many of you made that. Great. I'm going to turn it over to Principal Parker.
Yes.
The topic for tonight is walking in another person's shoes. And remind me, Lisa, we know who's
Ms. Janney.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a great topic. There were lots of other suggestions and comments that were added on to your topic as well. So this is one that jumped out at us. It's hopefully leading to a great discussion.
Definitely. And Happy New Year, everyone. Very good to see everyone. Happy New Year. I'm so glad Ms. Janney is here because I was going to ask her as I begin to help set the stage as to what brought that to mind in terms of when you put that on your paper. What were you thinking?
Well, I think.
Ms. Janney, make sure your mic is on, I'm sorry. And when you guys talk, make sure to hit the button for me. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I think that to have a great organization or team, there has to be mutual respect from every party involved. And so I think that in a lot of times when there's breakdowns in relationships or communication, a lot of times it stems from either not understanding where a person is coming from or a lack of respect for what that person is doing or how they're doing it. And I really believe that cross-functionally, if you're thinking in a business realm, works well to understand where other teams are coming from to get to a goal. And I think a school is a unique environment where there are so many different opportunities and practices that are put in place daily by both the administration, the teachers, the security, the custodian. There's so many different parties trying to make something work. And ultimately, you need everyone's buy-in. And I think to get that buy-in, you need everyone to kind of experience what the other teams and people are doing. And so that's basically the basis of where that idea came from. But I think it can play out in so many cool and interesting ways. So I'm excited to hear these ideas.
Definitely. I could almost just tear up and cry as I hear you saying that. You were in our heads as we were thinking about what that was to stand for in this discussion. And I think partly when I think back to the pandemic that we all passed through and are on the other side of, one of the things we said when we got back to school was that we had a full year and a half that we had to acknowledge that socialization in the way we know socialization occurs did not occur for our youngest people, right? So when we think about it as our older selves, we've experienced and done things in such a way that we have experiences and ways in our minds so that we could recover and come back and know what those things are that we sometimes call common courtesies. You know, those things where you would say, if, for example, when I put the Husky habits up, there was rumblings around the building like, this is so stupid because they should know this already. My question was, what if they don't? What are we doing as an institution of secondary learning to help teach that to our students? Because for a year and a half, they didn't have it. And the one thing that the staff was saying, especially our teachers in our class, was that seniors weren't behaving as seniors usually did when we got back. And freshmen weren't like freshmen usually are. It was almost as though everyone was underdeveloped when it came to socialization. And we could have sat in that and just said, well, you know, like, I hope they catch up. Or we had to do something in order to assist with that. What I'm also noticing, though, as Ms. Jennings said, I believe that that year and a half of no socialization or low socialization also affected adults as well, as we were going through. I thought it would be a good text, because I was hoping that you would say that. I brought some responses to emails that I have gotten, just from things that I have sent out that were just basic, like letting the transparency be there to tell community and students, you know, what was going on. And I didn't have to go far. I just went right back to our latest school closing because of the weather. And I just want you to hear the responses that I get from emails that just say, it's -30 outside, and when your children come walking for 2 miles with a hoodie on, we know that we have to save them from the bone-chilling cold, so we close for that day. And so you probably saw the email that we sent out. One was, so why didn't I just do a half day? There's no dear Miss Parker or dear anybody, it's just, so why not just do a half day? This solution just reinforces to kids the core lesson that it's easy to cancel life's activities. Another, this is complete ridiculousness. BS spelled out. Open your doors. I would like to express my disappointment that the district has chosen to hold another e-learning day. As was made painfully clear by the pandemic, e-learning is not an adequate substitute for in-person education. Studies on the pandemic have shown that students whose schools utilize e-learning are significantly behind their peers whose schools were held in person. Needing to bundle up for a cold day in Illinois is not cause enough to sacrifice my child's education. Okay.
That was more polite.
Yeah.
Correct. I got complete sentences.
Yes.
I say that just to say I'm always surprised at just the way we communicate, as Ms. Jennings said, how we communicate our message. It is okay to feel a certain way about things. That is perfectly okay. And I always tell people it's okay to let people sit in the emotion that they have. How you convey that emotion is critical. How our children see us conveying those messages are how we are shaping this world for the future. And so when we think about the fact that we have a memory that takes us back to what common courtesies used to be, our children are living out their day-to-day right now. So this is becoming their norm. So believe it or not, and I didn't print any of those, children write me the same way and tell me things the same way. And I oftentimes have to, you know, please come see me so we can meet, so that they don't get the idea that everything starts with a malintent. Because what I say is the way I approach a situation or a conversation is never assuming malintent. Like I started to hurt, like we sat and talked about going to e-learning to hurt you. Like that is never the intent, but sometimes the response is as though we meant to hurt you when if we take the road of why might you have made this decision? Even if you want to tell me I don't agree with the decision, the way you would do so would come out differently if you did not assume that I was trying to hurt you. So I'm saying this to guide our discussion because we have to, one, be able to start with good intention in mind. And I don't know everyone's intent. I choose to start with good intent because it's easier for me to believe in life that you didn't mean me harm than to go through life always thinking somebody's out to get me. That's me on a personal level. And I want to try to infuse that to our school community, our students especially, as well as our adult community, because our students not only hear what we say, they see us in our action. So I know that the children write me the way they do because they have seen someone write that way or read something written that way. that is how it's communicated, because all of them do not. And so I want to make sure that as you hear our discussion questions tonight, you're thinking about that as it's going through your mind. I pulled this one too. This was from when we had to do our secure and teach. And someone said, stop avoiding the question. When was the note found? Date and time. And I'm like, wow, that's just some of the things. But mutual respect, as Ms. Janney said, is huge. Because even in my response to this, I always respond, Mr. and Mrs., but thank you for reaching out. Because I know you did so only because you are trying to advocate for your child. So I respect the fact that no matter how these messages come through, it is done with the intent to advocate for their child. It is my responsibility to help rephrase and reform as we go around to the questions. So one of the things I want you to think about in our large group before I break us up into smaller groups, so that we can dive into a couple more of the questions before we speak out. What are the important ideas when you think about what I just said in terms of if we are the people who are to help our students to understand where we want to grow them to? What are the important ideas that we should be focusing on within our education setting? Think about our culture of our building. What is it that we need to be focusing on with our students? Because we can't do everything, right? But there have to be some key things that we find important that we want to do with students that should guide us in this culture building for our school. So I'm going to have us popcorn that out, which just means I want to hear what you're thinking about that. What are the ideas that you think we should be focusing on with our students when you think about what we should be educating them on? The same way I sat with the culture of the building team and came up with the Husky habits, deciding that we were going to be responsible, respectful, and reliable, and then defining that for the kids. Like, what does that look like? And what does that mean in this space and in our lives? What do you think when it comes to stepping into other shoes? This is also going back to the empathy we talked about a couple of months ago, and someone had said, I don't think you can really teach people empathy. We've got to figure out how, or else we are saying we're going to live in a world that lacks it, and I don't think that's going to be the greatest place to be. What are some ideas you have? And again, you can just popcorn it out. What comes to mind when you think about what's the most important to teach children, students, when it comes to educating on empathy, on stepping in someone else's shoes and understanding what that looks like?
I would say active listening. It starts with
White space?
oops, oh,
Thank
oh,
you.
yes, thank you. This active listening, like, let me make sure I understand what you're saying to me. And this is what I got. Do I have that right?
Thank you. Active listening. So making sure students know what that means. And oftentimes we as adults have said, I don't know if you've been in conversations with friends where you said, sometimes I think you hear me, but I don't know that you listen to me versus waiting for me to stop talking to get your next word out, right? So active listening is an actual skill that it takes to focus in on what someone's saying without your rebuttal in mind. Okay, yes, Sarah.
I was just talking with a bunch of teachers the other day about this very thing. And so two things come to mind. One is that communication is more than words. Words are really important. But it's also body language and tone. And in what you read, right, we didn't have body language, although we could probably imagine it. But the tone and the word choice, right? So communication is complicated and can be practiced. The other thing that comes up for me a lot lately is that to be curious and not judgmental. And that's very much what I hear you saying, Susan. It's almost as if brain science, if you are actively being curious, you cannot be judgmental because you're collecting information actively. So I would say curiosity beats out judgment. And then I think something that a lot of adults don't understand. But kind of reinforcing what you said, is that we don't have to agree. We don't have to be friends, we don't have to agree ever, right? People might never want the school to close under any circumstances. But we do need to communicate well and with respect.
Very good. Yep. And I think that's a big one. Like when I speak about agreeing, I even had to say that when I was speaking to students in the calendar forum. They were trying to make sure that I understood that there was a level of comfort that they had with what they knew. And so I was open to hearing that, but then they wanted to also rebuttal things that were like, it's almost like is the sky blue? Like we can't say the sky is green just because we don't agree that we like the blue, but we could say the sky is blue and I just don't like that color blue, right? But I can't ask you, like, are you sure that's blue? Or maybe it's green, you know, like that. Like, we don't have to agree, but we do have to come to some understanding that, like, we hear each other, we listen to what each other's saying, and we're deciding to be on opposite sides for that point. Thank you so much. Any other ideas? Yes, Miss. Yes.
Home training, in other words, just common courtesy. I mean, kids so often, so quickly go to cursing each other. And you have to escalate to that so fast, especially if they know just to say things like common courtesies. Please, thank you, excuse me. May I, rather than kitty. I just like to see common courtesy.
Yeah. And I will say this before I go to something. I always look at the example of the tree and the fruit because the tree yields us the fruit. So I'm always thinking, how did the fruit know to be that way? And so when we say that too, I think we have to recognize we need to be explicit because my home is not everyone's home. And so what's common in my house may not be common everywhere. And so I think it's very important that there are definitions that we use when we like speak these things so that everyone knows what do you mean when you say good home training? Because that is different for everyone and different culturally for different people as well. So we want to keep that in mind.
So we've talked about a little bit before, like this, but like finding a way for like, I think students and like faculty, whether that's like teachers or like custodians or whatever it is, like kind of understanding what each other are going through, because I think that's where there's a lot of lack of empathy, you know, people leaving trash in the cafeteria or, you know, teachers not fully understanding like maybe what a student's going through at home and like not giving them enough time for their work or something. There's just kind of like a lack of empathy there at some times. So I think it will be important to like help people to understand what other people are.
Yeah, like I can't walk in your shoes if I don't know what they are, right? So it's very important that I'm clear on what your shoes are, because in my mind, I can create a beautiful picture of what I think those shoes are. And then I don't know what that really is, you know, when I'm actually having to see it and live it. And I thought that was really important when we went through the phase where we actually had lunch outside of the cafeteria because the South Caf was being built. And I mean, garbage would be everywhere. And I would go outside during the lunch periods and I would pick it up. And I would just have conversations with students about, is this the way we want our environment to be? Because we're thinking individuals. So it's all about thinking in the space as opposed to just pick your stuff up. Why are you like that? How, you know, that's not helping to change a behavior. I need us to understand, look at our space. Is this what we want us to be represented of? Like if someone came in at this time, are we okay with them seeing this as our life as we have it today? And so trying to compel people to make a difference because it would be a good thing to represent myself differently versus the way I see it. Very good, very good. Any others before? Okay, go ahead.
I think also sometimes there is this sense of entitlement that can lead to a lack of empathy if people are, and sometimes it's cultural too, because if you were always taught to believe that what you say matters, your voice matters. So when sometimes you feel that people aren't listening to you, that can come off as a little bit aggressive or not as empathetic as you would like to be, or it comes off as rude sometimes too. And so you have to think about, like when you talk about what's being done and what's being shown at home, if you always had a sense of this is how I speak, this is how I talk, well, I don't have to wait, I can just interject, I've always talked this way. You have to also understand or teach your children sometimes that this isn't the way the rest of the world works. And though we may have these practices at home, it may not come across as being kind or empathetic or nice. It's going to come off as rude. And we don't often say that because I don't know why we don't say it. It doesn't come off. And then the other part of that is too, sometimes when adults get that from kids, they don't know how to respond to it, and it comes off negatively because it is a rude space. And then students don't understand that these are also human beings that they're talking to, because I've heard kids come in my office and tell me some of the things that they said, and I was like, you were out of line. And then they said, but that's an adult. So it's this implied perception that because we have reached a certain level of our maturity, we're supposed to just accept it and give them grace. But when are they ever going to learn?
So we have this implication of how we think people should act. And I think about this when we go out to like TSA or where, you know, at the airport, like, you be nice to me when you tell me to take my shoes off, right? And we're not thinking of the thousands and thousands of people. Like, I can't even imagine having to tell people every day that you cannot take that drink in with you. Like, we have to know that by now. Oh my goodness, you have water with you. Can you imagine after 5 hours of that, where you must be? And you still must be like, please take your water out of your bags. Please take your shoes off. Thank you so much. Please get your child as they're running through the thing. Like, we still expect that. And what I always tell students is sometimes you hit people's humanity button. You know, like we're all human beings at the end of the day. So we come with this persona, but then there's that moment where you just hit your limit and you become that human being. And sometimes disappoint yourself where you're like, oh, like that's what I hope about the emails, that people are like, oh, I shouldn't have hit send. But like, that's that moment where you were just like, I'm sorry. And that's why I give grace, because I'm like, you didn't mean it like that. You don't know me like that. So, yeah.
So the one thing I would say is, we all know what we mean by good home training. But if you say that to a child, implying they didn't have good home training, now you're criticizing their family. I mean, you can define all you want about what we expect, and just, you can get a defensive reaction if you define their family as not good.
Yeah.
I would not say that to a child.
Right. And my thing is, instead of using terms like that,
Right.
I want to leave here with actual, what do we mean?
Right.
Like, so I'm not going to say good home training. I'm going to say I pick up after myself.
Right.
Or I do not curse at adults. Or I respect the people by, if I see that they're trying to tell me something, I don't just talk back, right? So we're going to define what that is by saying the thing versus the title we give it. So here's what I'm going to do. Yes,
I'm going to say just one more thing, which is that sometimes I think the part that you alluded to this about, you can have an intense feeling, and that's, you know, everyone has those and is entitled to their feelings, but it's how you communicate that. But I think the thing that's tricky for everybody, kids and adults, is to be self-aware, to know, be able to realize, not just react because you get triggered, but to somehow learn, and it's a skill to learn. All of us need to learn. And do it. And that's where, you know, like you were saying, I'm imagining that person who said, oh, shouldn't have, you know, and sent it, you know, that they realized too that they should have just reflected or read it over or something before they sent it. That process is not, you know, we all fail at some point in our lives or every day or something around that. If we're tired, if we're stressed, if we get to that point where we've been hit, you know, with lots, and then we get, you know, I can't just go off. And it's not necessary, and you get triggered by something that maybe on another day would no big deal. So I think I don't know how it's a hard thing for all of us to keep
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
And so that word that you used, Dr. Applewhite, about grace is really important also, that
Mhm.
we get to know each other well enough so that we can give each other grace, because we can say, or we, it's like, yeah, I know you did that
Mhm.
way.
Mhm.
But anyway, it's just a big topic and it's a difficult skill.
Two things you said that, and it is that, and when I hear people say skills, I want everyone to know skills are taught. So when I think about our interventions here at our school, we are teaching students how to do what we say we want. So I use this example all the time when you say, I just need you to relax. Who learned how to relax? Who taught relaxation? Did anyone take relaxation 101? I get it now, I read all the books, I'm doing all the mindfulness, but I have over 30 plus years of like never relaxing, always running, always getting like this is what we do, like, and now they want me to relax. And we do that to our kids too. Like you said, we have to know that everyone fails. Did somebody tell the kids that? Because I spend a lot of time every day trying to help kids understand that you are not a failure because you did not succeed in something. It's okay, but that is not what they are coming to me with 16 years of, no, it's not, it has to be an A, it has to be perfect, no, we're not. I don't know why you look at us and think we are, but we do a good smoke screen because the kids think it has to be perfect. And we have to make sure that if they're going to be self-aware, that that's tied to something they care about. My self-awareness is tied to how I represent my mother. I always wanted her to be proud of me. And so when I think about what I say and what I do, it is not, do you think I'm good? It's, would she have been happy with the way I said that? It's like, I don't want anybody to think that she didn't do her job, like her job well. And that's what mine is tied to. Everyone's has to be tied to something you care about, because that will override any situation. So that when the TSA guy screams at me because I did forget, I'll be like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Versus, oh, like, and getting into a fight with the person. So we have to do our group activity because I gotta pick your brains. And I want you this time, I was going to count you off, but I'm gonna read the topics because I want you to pick the one that you feel drawn to, so that I can get you to give me some very good feedback. But I also need you to recognize if 12 people go to the same poster, I need you to pick your next. So make sure you're spread out. There has to be at least 2 to 3 at each poster, okay? You can't just all stay in one, okay? But I'm gonna tell you what's on each one so that you can let it marinate, and then you're gonna decide which poster board you wanna go to give me some ideas. So the first one here, what are the positive effects of prioritizing the perspectives of others? What would be the positive effects? Why would I have you say this? Because no matter what you do and what you present, somebody is not going to agree with it. Somebody's going to say, this is horrible. This is not what you should be doing. Who said focus on this? And we have to be ready with, what are the positive effects that could come from doing this? Why would we even put our energy to this? Conversely, on this poster here, I better be ready with what are the challenges to this, because somebody's going to tell me all of the ways this can't work. I'd like to know, what are the challenges we foresee in trying to prioritize the perspective of others? I think this is very, very big in terms of our thinking, in terms of like how we think about other people, getting away from just these titles like equity. We say that word, right? Equity. To me, equity means how I treat and think and work with others, right? How I'm keeping you in the forefront of my mind with that work. And that means I have to be prioritizing you in some way to do that. I can't come to that conversation about me, and then say I'm listening and hearing you, okay? So positive effects, challenges that we see. And then this one here is, what actions can be taken to meet the growing need for the empathy we're speaking about? What type of programs or activities, what would we need to actually do to see this happen for our school? What are the critical ideas that should guide the education of students? This goes back to what Sonia said. How could students and families walk in staff shoes? How could staff walk in student shoes? Like, how would that look? Like, how could we even accomplish that? And then back to our definition, how do we even define and then articulate our commitment to this work? Because we have to be committed. Whenever I roll anything out in this school, it never is about, I think I have the best idea in the world. I am committed to seeing change happen as a result of doing this. And I'm looking for change because we've all said we need some change to happen. We don't have to have just one idea, but we do have to have some ideas in order to do that, okay? At our clock, we are 2 minutes before 7:05. I'm giving you till 7:15 to get these ideas up there, okay? So pick your poster. I'm coming around with markers. I did do that one. That's define and articulate the commitment to the work. And you have a little over 10 minutes to get ideas. If you get the ideas on there quicker, we can come back together and we will do that. But pick your poster. Yes, and you could, if you want to float, I'm fine with that. I can be flexible on that. Yes. Oh, no. You have a perspective. You don't put it in bias, that's just a point of view. You know,
We all have.
I know, we all have bias. Bias is happening.
It's the
I agree, she's the
self-awareness.
expert on it. And you can float. If you have things you want to put on more than one, absolutely.
Oh, you can go to more than
You
one.
can go to more than one. I will not
Mark.
restrict. I am open-minded.
So, sorry, I'm being cut the words, but are we supposed to discuss this at these
Yes,
posters?
yeah,
Or
but I-
write it down?
The ideas to discuss, I know sometimes, especially since you all are going to posters that you have feelings about. So yes, please, talk to the people there.
The person. I should have stolen Marcus.
You did not steal a marker. I gave freely.
No.
Yeah, good.
Oh, you so sorry. So sweet, thank you. You mean it's not like the board? I'm not following the thing.
Why would I prioritize both? I think that's great, where you have to switch to the other person, and you have to present what you think their perspective should be.
Yeah. It's really hard for you to.
Six. Myself.
I always wrote them out. Sideways, it's a look, you look at it. That's not.
So I'm just gonna put, well, I think role play is, it's really structured.
So I'm okay for the student, they have to really be the importance of it, and how we like. We're gonna do this activity, right, like that's why we do like that fun. So it has such an impact, like especially shows. I think they become athletes then now, when they're in the lunchroom and they see, you know, their buddy, because I think financially, it's a really good experience for schools. And I wonder like how you do that with other persons. So whether it's like their kids, I mean, people who are not necessarily teachers, so like mentor custodians. No, that's, you know, could them and dating friends, they do the custodian and work, it's really something that, you know, you have like, and then you're dressed like other adults. Learn why, then whatever, you know, kids are throwing trash all over the school, you have somebody in the hospital person, clean that up, or like, you know, I think it's also And I said to the parents that, so you may they not like when I commit myself. But then she said, guys, guess what? And that's why what does it look like to you? How would you want that set?
I guess
Yeah.
Just the kids.
say like.
Oh, absolutely.
And we didn't have all that, so we went out there. We had to learn how to interact with each other.
We've got 6 minutes remaining, 6 minutes, in case you want to blow this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
And critical ideas to guide the education. How do I then teach, reteach?
I'm sure, yeah. You did a good shoe for raise. But like. It's like. I really like conversations. That concept, like.
Well, I think it does. I think it's good.
I experience a little bit, like.
A genuine building, like, they're trying to understand why it's important to see someone else's perspective, to understand their experience, they want to like. I think that, then generalize to other sectors, but I just recognize, like, he is an adult.
Okay.
Yeah, especially, I can see the adult, they're probably first, what their perspective, and really struggle. And why we create perspective was more, it's still important to try and understand that, and so that person can be heard and feel that they, you know, like, I think that's huge. And so then, when it comes to that, it doesn't get better, right? Like, you don't have to, and so that's tough, though. Well, and I.
Yeah. Outside of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got 4 minutes, 4 minutes.
Want to, like, the rewards is good to get.
Yeah, and that, I think one, definitely, you know, we, that's.
I'm gonna go.
Yes.
Like one of the best things where it's like, you know, like, that's exactly what I should. Nobody wants to get like made fun of it, but like, I mean, you know, like, don't describe me.
Oh, I try, I never go, I would never.
Right. That's like.
Or I would always try to have that. Couldn't. You know, that's what I said.
That's
Sure.
exactly what I heard,
Yeah.
which is like, adults. There's adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, and we're communities of practice, cause it's I mean, it's communities, it's you're now just. When we jump, I know my friendships, so it's like.
No.
Yeah, like, not going.
I was still not able to exactly.
Well, and we, the way we.
Yeah, I watched it. We absolutely could never make out a discussion, not one, not.
I feel like.
It's what right here.
Yes.
And it's, you know, like, roll, and they roll, like, how did that work?
It looks, well, it's, I almost like really, I think there's not this, like, there's like a path.
You have 2 minutes, and you're gonna make your way to the seats in the center.
Wow, I'm.
You have 2 minutes.
Well, and thank you for volunteering for this, that's really important.
Leadership and present or discuss something for the activity, and then by the end, the idea is. Well, and it's in, like, it was actually designed for that, but we did it with. But I think eventually it needs to. Oh, because I don't have a hard going on.
This be part of freshman orientation. Like, these ideas
It
incorporated
could be,
into
you have
life.
to find ways to infuse it into what we
Yeah.
do.
But
Absolutely.
this has to be continuous throughout the 4 years,
Yep.
not just one day.
Absolutely.
But like next
And
week,
so
we have
we need every
incoming
adult.
graders.
Correct.
So it would be a good time to try to
Some of them are.
steal these ideas.
And the big thing is to get people
Yeah.
their authenticity. We do the same thing, same way all the time.
Some of
And
them.
do something different.
You have to retrain the parents.
Reach back. Absolutely. Yep, because otherwise it's way too weird. You've got 30 seconds and then you gotta be in the blue seats in the center. 30 seconds and then we're coming to the blue chairs. It's okay.
Yes. I learned about like development.
Oh, yeah.
Development, kids are.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm striking it.
And I.
All right, that's time. Yeah, that is the thing. Metal. Yeah, I don't know. He was on the singing thing where you dress in costume.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
The mask singer.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. You know, they're all okay.
One thing is medical.
He's basketball. I
That's all. All I can.
can't remember his name. Oh, yes, Ron, yes. He needed, and you know what part of the story was, he needs to change his identity because he had, does some really messy things. Okay, that's time. My wonderful, wonderful committee members, that's time. So everyone to the blue seats, you will have to reach behind you for a microphone. But you can grab them from the circle, yes.
Oh, are we coming over here? Got it.
Yep. My thoughtful gentleman in the back, we're to the blue seats. We're in our circle. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes.
You're fine, you're fine.
Okay. Well, now I know.
Okay, first, thank you for participating. I love the fruitful conversations that were happening. We have a little under 15 minutes and this is how our circle is gonna go. Cause I always have to challenge. I have to challenge the students, challenge myself, challenge staff. The questions you're gonna be answering as you're talking, what did you just hear? Cause you had a chance to share with people in your group, what did you hear? As it relates to what we were just talking about, building empathy, walking in someone else's shoes. And it doesn't have to be just on the poster, but like, what have you heard? What touched you that you remembered? And then what are you going to do? So oftentimes we come to spaces and I can tell Susan what Susan needs to do. Susan, you need to do, but what are you going to do? In your little part of the work, because this is not just a thing inside the school. To me, this is like everywhere. What's the little thing or the big thing or the medium thing that you're going to commit to do as you're thinking about what we talked about tonight, about how much this impacts everybody in all aspects? Like I've talked TSA, I've talked in the building, I've talked at store. Like, what could we do to start making a little bit of the change we say we want? Okay, so that's what you're going to think about when you talk. Keep in mind, we have only until 7:30. So make sure your comments are, I don't know what the time is at, but like 30 seconds, 45 seconds, no more than a minute, keep that in mind, okay, Stephanie? I'll start with you, and then I'm gonna go around this way. And you are welcome in terms of what you hear to read something off your post or what, it's not a trick. You can do whatever you want it to be. It's definitely just what you heard, what resonated with you this evening.
So we talked about the benefits of learning about different people's perspectives. And the thing that I did think about, what David brought up, was that there can be multiple contradictory perspectives and they're all equally valid. So I think that's definitely something that's a challenge because, you know, culture in the United States, it's always somebody's gonna win, right? It's that competitive thing, whereas, you know, you can have like a mutual baseline of respect that you have a different opinion and it can be valid as long as it's based in facts, right? You know, and learning to respect that, I think it's essential in helping students to have those conversations is critical.
And then when we add those perspectives, we actually work better together as a team. Because when you've got a group of people together that have differing perspectives, the outcome that we can actually be something that maybe one person didn't come up with on their own.
Don't forget what you gotta do.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
go back to you.
I'll go, I didn't answer that, so then you can, is that okay?
Yeah.
Or you go ahead and then
I
I'll.
will
go ahead.
say, I mean, just continue to push that idea and invite on every team that I'm on, other perspectives, even though I usually do go in with the idea that I'm all answers.
So, you know, I work with teens on a daily basis and definitely getting them to think about other people's perspectives. And you can always tell that when you give them a moment to actually do that, they really do need that guidance, and you need to have the patience because it seems like, well, you should know this, but they really do need that the question of, well, how do you think this might impact somebody, this, you know, and they do really think about it then, and you start to develop a common language and you know the relationship just improves from there. So I think that's really important. They need a lot of practice in thinking about perspective because you know, developmentally, that's just not something that's you know, mature in them yet. So they need a lot of help and guidance in that.
Okay, so let's put the conversation on how to, what actions can be taken to meet the growing need for empathy programs and activities, which to me as a former social worker, you know, gravitated toward that. And we talked about how for you, possibly something that's more naturally empathy building like best buddies, where you're just kind of naturally participating in an activity that will build empathy. There's something to be said for actual skill building activities and how to find a venue for where the kids will take it seriously and not take it seriously. But we also talked about how adults have issues with empathy about honoring the perspective of kids. There can be a power dynamic. I'm the adult, I'm the one in charge. You have to listen to me. Apparently, which I had heard about before, there's something called adult SEL communities of practice, which are not necessarily within a building, although they could be. You know, sometimes they're outside the building from different school districts. But they meet over time to talk about these kinds of issues in this.
I work mostly in this back corner, and my favorite idea was that the media promotes bad behavior. And so we can try to model it all we want, we can try to teach it all we want, but then our kids go home and they see the housewives or wherever it's just on TV or they're watching social media. And it's bad behaviors that go viral. So that's a lot to overcome. But also I think what do I want to do? I think for me the most important thing is trying to model kindness and compassion in a public role. I think that's what I'm trying to discuss.
Can't hear you. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, how I would have the pleasure of working with Sonia Better, okay, how do we define and articulate the commitment, and I think whatever we choose. We say it loud, we implement it, and then we assess it. It has to be a group effort. I think everyone, you would say like, everyone is accountable, peer to peer, teacher to teacher. I really think the importance of, and I don't work with children other than my own, but when kids have or feel success, that's confidence, like, and you can just see it in their face. And if there's even just small rewards for positive behavior, for saying nice words, for being kind to someone, if that's constantly reinforced, I don't know, I think that their perspective changes a little bit, their self-confidence grows a little bit, and I just think they walk a little bit taller. So I think it's kind of walking the walk for everyone.
I was in this corner over there. I think really quickly, developing journaling and reflection, and I am committed to create more challenging reflection questions that force the students to realize how something that doesn't directly impact them impacts them.
I spent time over here and then some time over here. And I would say what I've noticed is that there's a lot of energy in the room. And there was a lot of energy when we were all doing this. And so it's heartening, right, that people in the room are interested in this and wanna do things. So that's sort of the vibe that I was picking up. So two things kind of stuck out for me. One, over here at the actions, I think because I do so much of this in my day job, I immediately think of all of the activities I know exist and that are going on and that have been effective, and I just want them all, I want to bring them all here. So, you know, a lot of vision, and then I get frustrated because you can't do everything and you can't do it all at once anyway. But I would say, and you know, to you who work here, that lean on me as a resource, or a thought partner, because there are a lot of great things going out that OPRF could bring around these issues. And I've like bursting with ideas. But I wanted really to emphasize something that I saw over here that I couldn't agree more with, and that I think is like a dual action. It says introducing a public service component to curriculum as something to guide education. And I have been thinking so much about that. I actually think there should be a public service requirement for graduation. And it doesn't, you know, there are many, many school districts that do this, so it's not reinventing the wheel, but I think it would be amazing, and then everyone would have something where they're giving to other people and not to themselves.
I agree with that public service requirement of graduation. We had it in my middle school. I flipped it around. I actually hit every single one of these posters and tried to contribute a little bit of something to everybody's discussion. There were a lot of really good ideas. The social media piece over here, the public service piece over here. Well, what I would personally commit to is something I do every single time I'm in this building, which is to model the behavior that I want to see. I model courtesy. If students are getting really loud like this, I will purposely go in there and talk to them in a lower modulated voice because it brings down their volume. Or I will take personal responsibility for stuff. Oh, I'm sorry, I messed up there. You know, I apologize for how that must have affected you. How can we make this better? Those sorts of things that I don't see practiced among students. But mostly, we gotta wait for these kids to mature. I mean, especially the boys don't really get it until about 25. I hate to say it. And I have both a son and a daughter, and my daughter is wonderful, but my son was still, he's 32, it's just.
So I was back at this corner as well, and I think the one that I'll highlight is the teaching reality and exposing it more deliberately and experientially. And so looking at how I'm actually thinking about work too right now, because I've been doing some semi-structured interviews with some alumni from this youth program and looking back on their experiences. And some of the things were some of the common threads that came up were just getting out of their neighborhood. In Chicago and go to other neighborhoods to play kids in sports and stuff that they weren't doing that before. And another thing that came up frequently was going to the Allstate, the now defunct Allstate head campus, wherever it is in like
Northbrook.
Yeah. That just like kicked a boulder away from the cave, but I'm just like being there like as middle school students and seeing like so it's things like that, just thinking about how we can be more deliberate about those activities. Getting out of the bubble.
I was over here. And I think what I really thought a lot about was how do we work with adults to promote this as well? Sometimes I think as adults, especially in education, we're worrying so much about what the kids are doing, we forget that we need to treat each other with kindness, and especially when there's a conflict or a disagreement, which leads me to believe what I'm gonna do is, like when I'm working with staff I feel like sometimes there's so much I have to get done, trying to get to the next task and making sure I get all the things done. But making a point of actively listening and hearing people, I think sometimes, we're trying to get all the things done and check all the boxes that we're not always like making sure that we're listening. So I'm gonna try and really.
In addition to modeling the behavior that I wanna see, also holding people, whether they're faculty or staff, accountable for their actions or their words sometimes. So like one of the strategies that we've been working with as a care team is calling in and calling out. So like when there's a sense of urgency, you have to say something because you see harm has been done and you need to step in and repair that harm, and sometimes you have to call out this bad behavior, like, no, that's not what we do, that's not being a good citizen, not being a good student or a good peer. And then calling the person in, sometimes it doesn't work for everyone, building relationships with people so you know who you're talking to and who you're in front of. Sometimes it means you have to call that person in with empathy, compassion, kindness, and love, and have a conversation and say, hey, I saw you out in the hallway saying this or doing that, that wasn't appropriate, so let's come inside and talk to you why we don't do those types of things. So that's one of the commitments that I'm making. Oh, I was back there, anyway.
Okay, so I went to that one a little bit at the end, but I was mostly at this one, and I don't know, I mean, you kind of already talked about a lot of what we talked about, but just like incentive for like being empathetic, which we're already doing some of that with Parker Perks and stuff, but then like basically what you were just saying, like creating a community where people do hold each other accountable. So like, I don't know, I think that like positive peer pressure would be a good word for it for like students, like, so that's like, I guess what I'll do, like making sure I have my friends. Thanks.
Yes, I was in that group there, and I think those of us who were in that group covered it. And I would just say for myself, just this conversation it's good to have them, even though I have been in my work life and in my home life, think of myself as always practicing empathy as much as I can. But just being here together, talking about this, I just notice, it's like, this is good for me to remember things and it's like a kick to myself. So, thank you.
Hi, I was on the backboard over here and critical ideas. As a parent, my daughter got earbuds for Christmas and it is the worst thing.
Knocking the whole world out.
Loses them.
But, I think as a parent, we're already pretty respectful and I don't have any disciplinary problems out of them in school, but exposure, I belong to 2 or 3 museums a year with memberships and we go to a museum every weekend. Right now, we're doing a Basilica tour in Chicago every Sunday. There's only 3. We're on the 3rd one next weekend, so it's not like any big thing, but to go around and look at the churches and to see the big ornate pictures on the top, she's kind of amazed at that and she's excited about it. So she's excited about it. Then she wants to get the program. She wants to Wikipedia the church and figure it out. So I find that I am fighting with social media and I am fighting with bad behavior because there's a lot of whys and everything. So I find myself having to listen. And like you said, as soon as I get finished talking, she's responding and I'm like, hold on, that's like a 3rd grade thing. If you respond before I'm done talking, that means you're not even listening. So we have to listen to each other. So I find myself listening to her and then I'm like, okay, now it's my turn to talk and we get things done. As an educational advocate, I would say the most important thing we have to do is to listen because they're not always right, but they're not always wrong either. So we do have to listen. And in the beginning, we threw out a bunch of great ideas. But I think the main thing is we are trying to create a child to an adult that can operate in this world after graduation, whether it's no school, whether it's trade school, whether it's college. I mean, you still have to know what you're doing at college. Your mom can't drive to U of I every weekend for socks and take you to Walmart and stuff. So just a matter of we were trying to create a level of maturity for the students. I mean, boys 25, okay. We kind of want them to be able to at least survive on their own. And with that, the whole educational process and the whole explaining what reality is in the world. And, if you keep this behavior up, maybe you might not survive in the world. You're going to change at some point, whether you like it or not. So you should probably just, go with the flow now and make it easier on yourself.
What I heard, that this was important, that this is something that we should focus on as a school community, as a school, as a group. That's important to us, like how our children and we as adults are handling empathy and the ability to see ourselves and other people's shoes matter. What I will do and what I will say right now is that malcontent never rests. So the wheels of social media and media that is fed by the attention of all of us, because they wouldn't do it if we weren't watching, is keeping the race and the competition going for the attention of all of us. When we sit at tables and we're on our cell phones and devices, even if it's just to check that quick text or to answer the questions, and we're not paying attention to the people in front of us, we are modeling what's important to us. The thing that gets our attention is what matters. So I am going to make sure to point out what is taking people's attention, because that which has your attention is what matters to you. And that's not a bad thing, because oftentimes we start to think, does that mean I'm a bad person? I just had to check that text, and this is work, and this doesn't matter what the excuse is. That which has your attention, and that is for you, for your own self-reflection, because the children are watching. They're watching even more than they're hearing, as we just heard, because they're just asking why, because that's clearly how you feel, Dad. But why? And they need to understand the why in order to come along on this ride with us. So I am very big, even at the school, I have to give the kids the context. Again, we can disagree, but they have to have the context, because as high schoolers, they can still discern for themselves. Does this go into the it matters, it counts, or is this in the, here's another adult trying to tell me, insert here? So I find it to be my responsibility, especially while I do this work, to be the model that we say we want them to see. Not the one we just want them to be because that's what's easier, but what we want them to see. And that is what I set about each day to do. And I want to do that for both the adults and the students, because I think there's value in all of this. And I want to mention that all of you said this with your pieces, with enthusiasm and smiles in your voice, which is a great thing, because it left, when I heard even Susan say, the positivity that we might be able to do this. We should always believe that we can do it. We can do it if we're willing to put forth the effort to make it happen. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Bundle up and don't leave any skin exposed in the coat.
Linda, thank you again for being another really provocative session. This is great. Do you want to really briefly say anything about the BEP and future meetings?
Thank you, as I see my assistant principal drop the stage, I was just talking to her about this. So the behavior education plan is one of the important parts of our group, because we have to examine the changes that come forth from the school to decide if those are going to be changes that we adopt into our behavior education plan. We usually take that to the board in, say, April, which means our March meeting, we are going to be focused on any changes that come from our school to that process. So I wanted you to know, for the March meeting, we won't have a discussion like this. We will be talking instead about the proposed changes, as well as voting for which ones, if any, go forward. I do want to mention that for that meeting, based upon what I see, I might have to ask us to extend, only because March puts us right at having to have it for the board in April. So I will need the time in March to make sure that we get through all of them, but I don't know what they all will be, but I will know as soon as we put that together, okay? But that will be our March meeting, yes, Sam.
Will we be able to get the comments or the proposals before the March meeting?
Yes, Lisa will send those out and we'll have those in advance. And those will just be what the ask is. You'll have to come with your questions and all to the meeting, but yes, you'll have eyes on what those would be.
I would say too, if you've never seen the BEP, it might, if you've never seen the BEP, it might be helpful to look at it before that meeting, because it moves fast. I don't want to run your meeting.
And it is in the student handbook, so you have access to that online. If you go to the student handbook, it is there in full print. So you can see it. Last year, we also ran off copies. You may still have that, but if you look online, student handbook on our website, it's there.
So, so what I can do is, when we get ready to discuss this in March, I will send you the proposals, plus a copy was already printed. So then that way you guys can see side by side.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Linda, I think last year, a lot of the conversations were on the levels, so familiarizing yourself with the levels could be helpful to before that.
Thank you, Andrea.
I have a question about that. I have a question about that. Is that also in the board materials on the website? Because there is a behavior plan amongst the board's materials.
That is a good question. Meaning in the board documents?
Yes.
Like in the board.
Yes.
Agendas and stuff.
Yeah. It looked like-
They they actually review it every year, so it will be in last year's April agenda on board docs. I don't know if you guys want to look at last year's. I can also produce that as well if you like.
No.
I think it's also in the
It's there.
policy section.
Yes, that's, yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
So it's an existing policy, it gets updated every year through this.
And that's what we're
through-
talking
That's right.
about, is exactly updating that very, okay, because I have looked at it.
And it would be just the portions that are coming up for revision. So we would not go through the whole book. We're gonna go through the parts that are coming up for discussion for change.
Thank you for the clarification.
So it'll be about 2.5 hours in dinner.
I don't even check. No, I did not expect.
Take a look at it before.
Any other questions before we adjourn? Move to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
You guys are a bright light. Thank you so much for your